But there's something I think that if one has the penetrating seeing, you can see that there's a way that there's something about this Gilgul, something that comes from past life that actually, if you think about it that way and you look at people and look at situations that way, you can actually, it starts making sense to you. Emor is a huge parsha. I'll let you talk about it, Eli, but there's so much there.
Yeah.
But maybe a little context for
Parsha's Emor. It's a magnum opus of a parsha. It's got all the Yom Tovim in there. It has a lot of halachas, a lot of interesting ideas about Kohanim. And it, of course, I just want to mention that we're in the middle of the counting of the Omer period. And parsha where you find Sfiras HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, which we're in the middle of right now, it is actually commanded to us in this week's parsha. Just thought I'd mention that. This particular mitzvah, which we're going to be dealing with today, in a very, I see you got very excited from last week. He went all mystical on us last week, and now we went further into the mysticism, which is very cool. So this is, again, a verse speaking about korbanos, offering sacrifices. And the rule is very simple. The rule is that when you want to bring an animal sacrifice, one of the kosher animals that we're allowed, we'll see which ones in a moment, that you really get excited. You want to bring it to God, and not necessarily here we're talking about you did a sin of some kind. You want to bring a thanksgiving offering or a peace offering. It was a way to connect to God. You wanted to bring an animal. So the rule is that you have to, you're excited, your animal your goat gave birth to a baby goat. You have to wait a week.
Yeah.
You can't bring a newborn animal. You have to wait till the 8th day.
Yeah.
Why? So I'm going to tell you just very briefly a few of the simple explanations of why, and then we'll get into the actual verse and where we're going to go with this. The simplest reason brought is that less than a week old, the animal's body is not fully developed, and we can't know yet if this newborn animal will have what we call a moon, a physical imperfection. And an animal that has a physical imperfection was not allowed to be brought as a gift to God in the base of Mikdash. So we had to wait a week. That's the simple explanation. Just one more, because this is a beautiful idea. Just like a baby has to live through a Shabbos before he's connected to God completely through the bris milah, through the circumcision.
Yeah.
So too, when we bring an animal, we want that physical animal to have experienced the highest experience of this world, which is Shabbos, the Sabbath, before we bring it as a gift to God.
And but I think the last commentary that you just mentioned is a really good segue to that about having the Shabbos, because that takes us into spiritual, because you can say that the animal gets to experience the spiritual before it's sacrificed, so it almost like brings a fullness to its life, even though it will live, if it's designated for sacrifice, it will live only for 1 week or more, but not less than 1 week. So go to our website, Hebrew Learning Circles, and we have a source sheet. The way to find the source sheet, you go to Jewish Resources and you scroll down here to Parsha Videos, and it's right there. The video of this lesson is going to be posted there probably by the end of the day, and then this is the teaching by the Noam Elimelech. This is Rabbi Elimelech of Luzhinsk, 18th century, great, was a student of Maggid of Mezrich, and one of the founders of Hasidism in Poland. Now, while you're on the website, feel free to explore our other programs and resources. And most especially, I want to mention the Simple Meaningful Bar and Bat Mitzvah program. We're very proud of. If you or anybody you know is interested in Bar and Bat Mitzvah training and private ceremony, and offered online, Uh, Obviously, this is a good resource for them. So, if you'd like to join us live online, you can do that by going to meetup.com and join our meetup group. And the advantage of doing that is that afterwards we will open up the meetup room and you can join a Q&A and discussion with us about the lesson. We always appreciate your subscription. Also like and share. It's very meaningful to us when you subscribe. We know that you support us, and all it takes from you is a click of a button. Thank you so much. So here we go. We're ready to jump into the text. I'll read the pasuk from again from Leviticus, Parshat Emor, Leviticus. This is chapter 22, verse 27 in the Chumash. It goes like this: Shor or kesev or ez, an ox, a sheep, or a goat, kivaled, that is born. Vayashivat yamim tachat imo, it shall stay 7 days with its mother. Biyom hashmi'i v'hala yiratzeh lekorban, and only from the 8th day on it shall be acceptable as an offering, as a sacrifice to Adonai, to God. So the Norman Melched quotes, starts by quoting the verse, and then he says, "Dehine Adam tzarich liot oved habore baruch hu be'elu hamedregot." He says a person should be serving the Creator, the Blessed One, through these stages or these rungs. Now you may ask, what are the rungs? The rungs are hinted right in there, and we'll see how he opens this up. The first rung, or the first, I would say, approach, let's call this approaches. So there's 3 different approaches. The first approach, a person needs to follow the path of devotion. The second approach is a person needs to also be yearning to serve Hashem. And the third approach, גם צריך להתגבר בעבודה לבטל כל הדינים. Person also needs to be strong and willful in one's service in order to cancel out all obstacles.
These 3 levels that he's of avodah that he's speaking about. So I think the first one is consistency
Okay.
of trying to be connected to God. The second one, as you said, the desire has to remain strong. The third one, I think he's talking about self-discipline and overcoming obstacles.
We know that when we try to do good, the world is going to test us. It's going to, right? The higher worlds are going to say, let's see if you can overcome this obstacle, right? That's not uncommon. Right. And they say that the higher the spiritual level a person attains, the stronger the obstacles are. So,
right.
You know. Okay. ואם לא עשה אחד מכל אלו, אז צריך להתגלגל על זה. He says, if a person did not do, or I would say maybe accomplish, any one of these approaches or levels of divine service, the person needs to be reincarnated for it. In other words, to come back to another life in order to make the tikkun, to make that completion.
Right. So here, I'm going to have to just jump in for a moment because this whole concept might come as a surprise to many of our viewers, listeners. because Judaism is not normally associated as a religion that or philosophy that believes even or has anything to do with the idea. We think of Buddhism, Hinduism, we're thinking of reincarnation, and people might be shocked to hear this, but we do have a very fundamental belief in Gilgul and the Neshama, in the reincarnation of souls. It's
Right.
mostly brought through to us through the Kabbalists,
Yeah.
but we can go earlier and find very early sources
Right.
to back this up. And there's going to be an amazing idea here. What he's saying is simply amazing because you would a person might think that if a person did certain sins or didn't or the soul didn't complete its mission in this world, so it needs to be brought back to this world in a different form in order
Right.
to complete its mission. But he's not talking about just not doing a mitzvah or doing a particular avera sin.
Right.
He's talking about Gilgul on a whole different
Yep.
level, actually, which is a big chiddush, a big novel idea here. He's saying that he's talking here about midas chasidus, and he's saying you get brought back for not covering any of these three midas chasidus that he's talking about.
Right. 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 Right.
He's not talking about what we think of, and we've heard Hasidic stories about Gilgul, and we know that Bilam.
Yeah.
Bilam had to come back as a rock because he tried to curse with his mouth. So he came back as a rock. You can come back as an animal, come back as
speak.
that doesn't speak, and so forth and so on. So he did big sins. So he came back, his neshama coming. But here he's not talking about you did something and you didn't do something. So the soul had to come back to fill that in or fix that. He's talking about you did every mitzvah, you didn't do an avera, but you weren't holding by these levels.
You didn't work. You somehow you didn't complete something about these levels, or even one of these levels. Maybe you were, you had one or two, but even if one of these levels you didn't complete, you come back in a different form, or you can come back either as a person, you can also come back as an animal, and we'll see in a moment. We'll see how this connects to the animal. This is part of the process of the evolution and the completion of the what we call the term in is tikkun, the reformation or the correction of the soul.
Okay.
All right, so
this is a very strong statement, and he's going to go through each level now. But this statement is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But, go ahead.
So the beauty now. This is where we come to the beauty of the teaching is. So what does that have to do with the ox or the sheep or the goat? And he's going to explain. So v'zeu shol perush madrigat shol da'anu lashon habata. So this is why the ox is mentioned. Shol is ox. Perush madrigat shol, meaning the level of an ox. What is the level of an ox? It means the ability to see, to observe. Moshe Katuv Banot Saada Alei Shol, and this is a quote from Genesis, from when Yaakov Jacob is blessing all of his 12 sons before his death. So he's blessing Joseph, and what he says about Joseph is the girls will come forth and rise to gaze at you, because Joseph was known for his incredible beauty and charisma, and he drew attention wherever he was, and he was going to draw the attention of the ladies, and they will gaze at him. So the word gaze, shol, the word ox, which is shol in Hebrew is the same word as gaze, which is shul. Shul, with one tiny little change of vowel, but it's exactly the same word with the same letters. That's why he's saying, don't look at the word ox, shul is ox, but look at its deeper meaning. It represents the capacity to observe, the capacity to see something intently. Now he explains that. דהיינו לחשוב תמיד בעיני שכלו רוממות אל ודבקותו. That means to contemplate at all times in through one's inner eye or one's mind's eye, to see God's greatness and you could say closeness. So what's that observing? It's like in Chabad they talk about itbonenut, right? The practice of seeing. So that's penetrating, seeing in a penetrating way. So you see through the veil or the illusion of reality that we think that everything is so concrete and mundane and maybe difficult. But if you can penetrate with your seeing through that, you'll see that God is the ultimate greatness and ultimate closeness. Want to add?
Yeah. So again, the shore, the first animal we said was an allusion to consistency, to remain, trying to remain connected to God throughout our day and throughout our lives. So he's saying the key to that is the level of shore, ox, which means inner vision. So here he's basically saying to just stay awake, to basically train ourselves to stay awake to this inner imagining of God's greatness. And, God is great, So, and this is it's a very high level. It's something that we have to train ourselves to do.
Right. It's a contemplative practice, right? It's on the level of, I think, of the sechel, of the mind. I think what I see in here, you have the levels of the sechel, of the lev, and of the goof. We'll see that in a second. Kisufim, is on the heart level, and La'asot is on the goof level. So we know that the ox symbolizes here and speaks to, through the linguistic interpretation, the level of cleaving and the sechel. It's the level of contemplative level. Now, O Kesev, and now he's talking about the sheep. Kesev is the Hebrew word for sheep. Lachasof tamid lavodato, to be yearning, desiring always to be in God's service. And he's going to explain how do you come from sheep to yearning, maybe to what does a sheep do? Buy, exactly, the buying, right? So he says the sheep here has to do with yearning, with this deep desire, heart desire, I would say, right? So how? He's going to explain. Ki hashin mitchalefet besamech ubet befei. He says the letters, there are two interchangeable letters in the word kesev. The sin is the same sound as samech. So he's going to exchange sin for samech. And then the vet is the same linguistic group as the pay, and he's going to exchange those. And then you get the root of the word kesef or kisuf, and that means to yearn, to long for something, to desire something. And we see that in, like for instance, in the piyutim of Shabbat, right? Yedid nefesh, nichsof nichsafti, it's that kind of yearning for God. So the sheep is symbolizing that. That is the level of this heart yearning, the kisufim. And then he says, okay, what about the goat?
Gotta get the goat in here.
Exactly. And he says, this means that's the level of willfulness, of willfully canceling out or overcoming the obstacles. Now, why he doesn't explain it here, but it kind of like it stands out. The word "ez," goat, with one little tweak of a vowel becomes "az," which means power. Right? Az is power. It's more than koach. It's intense power, and that's what it takes to be willful. You can imagine this willfulness of like no obstacle can withstand my willfulness.
Right. There's even a term azut, azus, which means chutzpah.
That's right. Azut metzach.
And so, but the Rabbi Nachman of Breslov talks about azut de kedusha, azus de kedusha, holy chutzpah. He calls it holy chutzpah.
Holy chutzpah.
And this is what he's talking about, holy chutzpah.
So he's going to keep now analyzing the verse, and the verse says kiyulad. So the question here, kiyulad, is when it says. So the verse says an ox, a sheep, and a goat that is born. And the question is, why should the Torah say that is born? If you have an ox and a sheep, and if you have them, obviously they were born.
Right.
If they weren't born, they wouldn't be there, right? So why does the Torah have to say that we're born? That's an odd kind of semantic framing. And he's going to explain. So he says, that's right. You see, that's the. So he says, it's specific. He says, and we're born because this is reborn, born again. This ox, sheep, and as and goat are reborn. They're being reincarnated into this world because they need to correct, to complete something in each one of these levels, not because they transgressed. Chalila, right? God forbid. So he's very clear about that. He says, no, this is the process of the evolution of the soul. It doesn't mean they were bad. Or they did something bad, right?
Right.
It's very compassionate on his part. It's very Hasidic in that way. It's like seeing the good, and
yeah.
Okay, and then he continues, and he asks the question. Then it says Shivat Yamim. So 7 days, right? We said that the animal needs to live for 7 days before it's eligible for for being sacrificed. So he says, why 7 days? Why not 40 days? Why not 8 days or 3 days or whatever? He says, this is a hint to the full life of a person, which is 70 years.
Yeah, this is from Tehillim, Psalms.
Uh-huh.
Actually, we say this one on Shabbos. It says, Yimei Shanaseinu Shivim Shana. The days of a person's life are 70 years. And if he's a very strong guy, maybe 80 years. That's what it says over there.
So when it says 7 days, the animal shall live at least 7 days, that means that symbolizes the full life of a mature person. The verse says, and the animal shall be under the care of its mother. And here he says, what does that mean? Deeper. Perush imoya shchina. Imo, the mother, symbolizes the Shekhinah, the presence, the emanation of Hashem, of the Shekhinah. And the Shekhinah is Knesset Israel. That's the community, the congregation of Israel, or the entire people of Israel. Vehi mitpalelet tamid al Israel. And the Shekhinah is always praying on behalf of the people of Israel. So that is to be under the care of mother, is really to be under the care of you could say the compassion, the feminine aspect of the divine. And now he's saying this is
a real, not just Hasidish, but Polish Hasidish.
But you could say that this is the kind of the Hasidic signature.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, certain Hasidim.
Yeah, certain Hasidim. Some do, some don't. But this is definitely in good Hasidic character, on the
Yeah,
extreme kind of Rebbe power,
yeah.
the Rebbe power department, right? Is all this is also hinting to the Rebbe Tachatimo, meaning that the Hasidim are under the auspices or the care of the Rebbe, of the Tzaddik, who also is praying for Israel on behalf of Israel, to awaken compassion. And then he says, Amen.
Oh man. The takeaway is, when I come back as a Gilgal, I'm hoping it's not a rock.
Yeah. I want to say that, as an educator, and I think you know that as well as I do, because we work with children often, and I look at little children sometimes, and they come in and they have some traits, that are so strong in them that they didn't learn from their father, from their mother. It's just, they're born into the world with some kind of thing. It could be overconfidence. It could be, temperament. It could be, and kids are innocent, but they just have this in there. You see that it's something they're born with, and sometimes the thought of a gilgul, of somebody coming back to correct something, it's like it can't be only genetics. There's especially I especially see that. I mean, it could be kids with just unique talents, but it also can be kids with you'll get into trouble. And I look at the kid and I go like, what is it that the tikkun that these kids need to make? It's like doesn't make sense. The parents, it's a good family. It's like it's not poverty. It's not everybody loves the kid, but that they come into the world. And I mean, I don't want to talk about other people's kids, but I saw that in my son. From very very early. He came with, I'm not going to talk about specifics, but I noticed when he's 2 years old, 3 years old, and where did that come from? It didn't come from me. I don't think. I mean, a kid is too young. So you think about the Gilgul. It's like, how does it apply to me? I came into the world with all kinds of things. I'm still doing things that I wish I didn't, that I remember myself doing from kindergarten. What's with that? Where did that come from? What is this about?
Interesting. Yeah.
And then you try, throughout your life, you try, your parents give you feedback, your parents give, your teachers give you feedback, then your therapist gives you feedback, then God forbid your psychiatrist, God forbid hopefully it doesn't escalate, too much. But there's something, I think that if one has the penetrating seeing, like the show, you can see that there's a way, that there's something about this gilgul, something that comes from past life, that actually, if you think about it that way and you look at people and look at situations that way, you can actually, it starts making sense to you. I'm not asking anybody to subscribe to it. I'm not trying to shove any theories down anybody's throat, but just it's a perspective. When you start looking at it, because I grew up in a family of skeptics. So that wasn't my original training. Religious language was not my original training. But then you hear about it, and you start looking around and say, wait, maybe it's a good enough hypothesis. It may be explaining some things. So I won't discount. I would discount any stories, and I would definitely not discount this great Rebbe. I mean, I like the Noam Elimelech speaks to me. I'm happy to discover him. But on that note, let us all be successful in being metakin, what we need to do, being correcting and evolving ourselves as we need to. And I think we'll just end here. And again, I want to remind people to please subscribe and like and share. And the more you subscribe, like, and share in this Gilgul, maybe you won't have to.
Good time.
So with that, have a good week. We'll be back here again, God willing, at 9 o'clock next Wednesday. Shalom for now.
Rabim lo yuklu